You're listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast, the podcast for communications professionals in the corporate world who are committed to advancing their work and our field's reputation as critical business advisors that are not only invited to the decision-making table, but are required there. I'm your host, Tara McDonough. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Communications Business Advisor podcast. I'm Tara McDonough, as you know, and we have another exciting conversation planned for today. So we're talking to Anthony. And Anthony, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about what you do and where you are today. And then we're going to talk a little bit about your career progression, because this one, guys, is pretty interesting. So tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are today and what you're doing.
Sure. Thanks, Tara. And thanks for having me on here. I really have been looking forward to being part of this. I've been tracking your progress over this particular year and really love to see that pathway of having many of my peers from different industries to be a part of this. And so really happy to be a part of this. So I lead for Fujifilm corporate communications, and that's in the Americas. And I joined in April. And prior to that, I was Chief Communications Officer for CSL, which is a top 20 biopharma company based in Australia. And by the way, if you ever want any insights on Australia, I'm your guy. Been there 30
Oh my
plus
God.
times.
I will
Yeah,
take you up on that. I have my husband has family in Australia, like every good Irish family.
awesome.
But I feel like anytime we talk to them, it's like the expectation is you'll just come visit us. And I'm like, no, I
Yeah.
want to go see the country.
It's 36 hours of pure lovely travel one way.
Yeah, I
Door
know.
to door, but we can talk more about that too. And so we started at CSL, we built the global communications function from the ground up, and I'm happy to get into that. Prior to that, I was at DuPont,
Mhm.
was overseeing communications and public affairs there for a number of years. And when I think about my career, Tara, I think about it in thirds, right?
Hmm.
So the first third was spent as a journalist. I worked at 5 different newspapers across the US, was able to work up to being a managing editor of a daily newspaper. And then this little thing called, you may have heard of it, called the internet started to
Yeah,
surface,
I
right?
recall.
And became very obvious. Publishing companies really started to struggle in terms of generating revenue. Of course, they still do even today. And so I made that switch over to the quote unquote dark side. And that was
Hmm.
my second third, and that's in government
Hmm.
communications, and had the wonderful opportunity to work in a lot of different areas there, and was able to become the chief communications officer and press secretary for the governor of Delaware. And by the way, his name is not Joe Biden. Tom Carper, wonderful leader. I learned so much from him about being able to work your way toward the middle to get things done.
Yeah.
There was a great, great experience. And then at the end of his second term as governor, I had a choice to make, either to go with him to Washington to support him as being a U.S. Senator, or move into another area. And so that's when I moved over to my other third over the last 25 years in corporate communications. And so started at DuPont, was there for 14 years. For 8 of those years, I led public affairs globally. Wonderful, wonderful experience. And then this company, at the time, the largest company no one had really heard about, CSL,
Mhm.
had a new CEO focused on rare diseases. And because the focus on rare disease patients and of being headquartered in Australia, a lot of people don't know CSL, but it's the largest company in terms of treating rare disease patients like bleeding disorders, immune
Mhm.
deficiencies. The second largest flu vaccine business in the world,
Oh, wow.
too, as well. And was able to build, working very, very closely with the CEO for 10 plus years, where it wasn't even a team. We had a
Mm.
few people, working in Australia, a few people in the US, a few people in Europe. And over the course of 10 years, we built it up to a team of 65 people strong.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to talk about how we did that because I
Yes,
think you
please.
have to
And
demonstrate the value.
that's one thing that everybody in this field, I think, struggles with. Once they figure out the code, then I actually think it's harder to get the first five staff members than it is to
Mm,
get your next 50.
yeah.
Let's keep talking and then we'll
Yeah.
revisit. How did you grow the team?
Was at CSL, then he retired, and I said, well, what's next? Because we really pushed the needle, especially in the biopharma industry in CSL. We did things that really challenged the conventional wisdom in biopharma. And I can happy to get into some of that too. But then
Mhm.
I really thought, well, what's next for me? And, I had a couple opportunities. And I think the great thing about in communications is we get to choose where we work. So how cool is that, right? So,
Yes.
and what's more important than saving lives or improving people's health? And so I really want to make sure that my next move was really going to be special. And then Fujifilm reached out, and a lot of people don't know this, but Fujifilm has invested very, very heavily in life sciences. And so everyone knows, you know the imaging part. So I
Yeah.
really decided to join Fujifilm to help the company reposition itself from film to pharma. And wonderful progress has been made so far. We just developed our first communication strategy. It's been well received, getting great feedback, et cetera, et cetera. So here I am today, and I just love our vocation in
Mhm.
communications. And I've always been privileged to know that this is what I always wanted to do. And it takes some time to recognize how important that is. Like I always knew I wanted to do this and I just took it for granted. But then when you have children and you say, well, what do you mean you don't know what you want to do? Like,
Yeah.
and so, when we have that like passion and that
Yes.
and being proud, like, and you know what you want to do, go for it, lean in. And I give back a lot in terms of mentoring and coaching because where I started was at the very bottom of New Jersey, called a little sleepy town called Cape May, New Jersey, about 5,000 people. That's where I grew up. But I always knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I still consider myself just a kid from Cape May. And I'm still very fortunate. I have a home in Cape May as well. And I get to run around with my knucklehead friends like we're 14-year-olds, again, riding around on our bikes and having fun. But, it's really important that you and I are having a conversation like this because it's critical that as leaders, communication leaders, that we are giving back to our vocation. I see a lot of good giving back at certain phases of your career.
Right.
There's there's a phase right now where I think those who are in their 40s should be maybe leaning in a little bit more.
Mm.
So I see the 20s and 30-year-olds really getting involved and doing, great
Yeah.
work. And it's really, you really get energized on that. And then you got people like, me and at my point in my career where you really start to, reflect and give back. And, there's so much between these ears that I feel like I have a responsibility to give back. But I know those who are in their 40s, you have kids, you're trying to do the best you can, trying to do your career. But that's where, at least for me, was that I really prioritized my life. And that is, people say, well, work-life balance. I'm sorry, folks. In the world of communications, you don't have work-life balance, not working for a large corporation. The challenge is it's
Mm.
upon us as leaders to figure it out. So let me give you a great example. My daughter was a competitive swimmer growing up. Every every high school swim meet she ever had in 4 years, and they were in the afternoon. I never missed one. You want to know why? Because I figured it out.
Yeah.
I said, well, if I have to go back to the office, and this was before, remote, if I have to go back at the office at 5:30, I'll do that. And I did that,
Mhm.
5:30 to 7 and whatever. Like we are empowered to figure this out. And when you figure it out with what's important and your priorities are, everything else falls into place. And we all want to be the best parents and the best spouses and the best workers. But the burden is upon us to reflect and take a step back and say, okay, this is what I want to do and this is how I'm going to do it. Now, I'll be honest with you. I was not a great friend when I was in my 40s because I was off, spending time with my family, trying to progress my career, chasing my daughter around swimming pools all around the East Coast and everywhere in
Mhm.
between. But there's times and place you just have to prioritize, what's important. So, I just love what we do. I just do, and I hope your listeners are hearing like the passion I have. And everyone who has worked with me, I think it becomes almost contagious, the passion. And when
Yeah.
your leader leans in and they see not meddling, not micromanaging, but bringing the passion, high-fiving, showing up, you know, I think that really brings together a team and it makes you feel even stronger because at the end of the day, we have a lot to do.
We do.
It's upon us to figure it all out of what's
Right.
important to us, where we want to be, and make those choices. And sometimes the best career decisions are those moves you don't make. So I'll give you a great example. When I was leaving the governor's office at the end of his tenure, I actually had three positions offered to me on the same day.
Wow.
And it was pretty stressful, but what really it came down to, and I think this is really important for all of us to really think about, is do your personal values match with the organization's values? And when they do, it's just a natural chemistry. And don't go chasing after the money. That's not always the answer. Don't go chasing after the title. That's not always the answer as well. And so that's when I decided to join DuPont, a very value-based organization. And I live my being is very simple. I basically live around three areas. One, I treat people the way I would want to be treated, the golden rule.
Mm.
Secondly, is to be focused and agile at the same time, especially in what we do. And then thirdly, I live to learn. Like every day, I wake up trying to learn something new. And so when you're comfortable in your own skin of what matters to you, then you find out, where to match on it, and then it all kind of falls into place. I just see so many people. Sometimes they're either chasing after the compensation or chasing after a title, and because we work more than 8 hours a day. We work more than 5 days a week. Like you really have to believe in the mission of an organization for everyone to be, comfortable going through that. And, when I was at CSL, I mentioned that a little bit earlier. We, we literally created a global team up to 65 people strong. And get this, Tara. In the 10 years, I was a chief communications officer, and we built the team up, 65 strong. In over 10 years, I only had five people voluntarily leave the team and organization. And I think that's the testament to the culture that we developed, the
Mm.
passion that people believed, and they saw the strategy that we were execute against it, as well. Of course, we didn't have unlimited resources, but we had great chemistry, and people loved to be a part of something special. And you just see a lot of people just, churn, move on. They do their 2 years and move on. And the grass is not always greener on the other side.
Mm.
So, what we're trying to do here at Fujifilm is, really position the company to really be that leader in the life sciences and semiconductors as well. It's a wonderful organization. Have spent a lot of time engaging with the team in Tokyo. The team in the Americas are great as well. But we're just starting now, and like I
Yeah.
said a little earlier, we just pulled together our strategy, and we work together with the team, the leaders as well, in developing the strategy.
Right.
And when you do that, you ensure alignment, You
Hmm.
ensure the team is empowered. And most importantly, is that it also you deliver on your objectives and priorities because we can't be everything to everyone. And I love your reference in the past of, being the communications waiters and waitresses. Like,
Yeah.
do you want fries with that order? I'm
Right.
sorry. I want our team to be strategic advisors, not unlike the attorneys in legal, or not
Yes.
unlike the finance people, and not unlike, others. And so, people have opinions about communications, and those kind of things. And the great thing that I love about what we do is proving our worth. Now, some people will roll their eyes, and I hear this a lot. Well, so and so, they just don't get it. So and so, well, only if they knew what we did.
I
Well,
love a skeptic. Give me a skeptic any day. Give me
yeah,
somebody who doesn't know what we do. I feel like that's such an opportunity. I'm like, let me get in there then. I'm so excited.
bring it on.
I love being able to say to somebody like, well, let me challenge you on that.
Game
And,
on.
it's so powerful to see minds change as you start showing your value. It's when an executive, I don't know if you see the same way I do, when an executive has like firmly made up their mind and they don't have that same mindset that you shared of living to learn
Hmm.
and being, open-minded and thinking about like, well, maybe I'm missing something here and maybe there's additional information I could use and think about my team differently. It's when they're firmly set that that's when I'm like, get out. Just
Yeah,
get out of there because then they don't have growth mindset. They're not willing to be convinced. But if you
right,
have somebody, which I think most people are and most executives are, willing to be convinced, willing to learn, willing to see things differently, and what I like to position it as willing to expect more from your
right,
communications team,
right,
then that's a win. That's like, that gets me excited and enthusiastic. When people say they just don't get it, I'm like, good, bring me
right.
in. Like,
Now,
I'm down
now, with that being said, the burden of proving our value is on
on
us as
us.
communication leaders. It's
Mhm.
not about others. And so that's why you
Yep.
develop the strategy, you do it in concert with your stakeholders and your team as well. You remind them of that strategy. I always share with others, you're going to get so tired of seeing this one slide because it's what we do and how and why we do everything going forward. And so you work it together with them. You remind them of the latest, greatest miracle that you delivered, but
Mm.
you also prove your worth every day. Like you have to have a mindset of, like, I'm going to show them. And maybe it's, not everyone has that, but I like it. I think it's a challenge to say, you know what, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. And I don't know if others on the podcast that you've had, Tara, have said this, but my take on being a chief communications officer, it comes down to three very simple things. It really does. One is to work with the team and stakeholders in developing the strategy and governance. That's number one. The
Yep.
second part is removing the obstacles that are adversely impacting either individuals or the team overall for them to be their best selves, right? And
Yep.
then thirdly is for me to be the number one cheerleader of the team. Like
Yeah.
that's what your job is to do. And that includes engaging with leaders on a regular basis, showing them, what you should be doing, how we should be working. I don't get into micromanaging and those kind of things, but that's when you understand what a role is, just go out and do the best you can.
Yeah. There's so much here I feel like I want to dig in with you on. And the biggest one, not the biggest one, but one of the ones I'd love to dig in with you on is building that team,
Mm.
making the case for the team. You talked about coming into CSL and having,
Mhm.
there wasn't a function, there wasn't a team, and kind of building that from scratch. So, what kind of milestones can you share with us about either how you went about it or what big trigger points there were for you or any challenges even that you had in that path, along that path?
Sure, sure. So maybe this example will kind of really sort of set the tone. And that is when I was interviewing for the role, they never had someone lead communications. And, there was a new
Mm.
CEO came in and said, we really need somebody like that. And so I won't say is the person's title or name or anything, but the person said to me as they were interviewing, saying, I don't know why we need you. We're extremely successful right now. We have to be careful that we don't over promote ourselves. We've been around for a long time. Thank you very much. And it was a pretty short conversation. I went home and then my wife said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, game on.
Yeah.
And that just fired me up. And so what we really did was, again, this is not rocket science. One, we developed a strategy.
Right.
Company never had a communication strategy, really aligned with the business growth objectives too,
Right.
because sometimes communication folks get involved with doing the communications and not really lining back to the business objectives. So we made sure we did that. So we developed the strategy and did it in a very thoughtful way where certain milestones were going to be delivered, over the course of 5 years. Do this first year, do this second year, and those kind of things. So that was really important. The second piece was to have a vision in terms of what you wanted the team to look like. So when I joined CSL, I didn't have biopharma background. And those who have worked in life sciences and biopharma, I sometimes call it the biopharma mafia. Like it's the
Yeah.
same group and they move to different organizations. And that doesn't bring a whole lot of healthy thoughts, diversity, different ways of thinking, and those kind of things. And so the second piece was, as we were thinking about the team, is I wanted to challenge the status quo and do it in a way that really elevated CSL as the leader that it was. And so, in other words, sure, we had people who had biopharma background, but I brought in people who had former journalists
Hmm.
on storytelling. I brought in people from different industries, such as consumer goods. And so when you're bringing in these different thoughts, wow, it's really, really powerful. And let them kind of do their thing and it lines up with the strategy. The other piece to that, too, is to provide that professional development, too. We
Right.
can't expect people just to join and say, wow, this is great. Because in our business, my gosh, communications has changed so dramatically in the last 15 years, 10 years, even the last 5 years. And especially now with AI,
Right.
we have a great opportunity. And so you always need to have the development. So the second piece of that, Tara, was to really have a vision on how you wanted the team to look. And
Right.
so that lined up with the strategy. And then the third piece was foster relationships all across the organization. Just don't go to the CEO. Just don't go to your boss, whoever you report into. Work it globally,
Yes.
work it around there. Like I said earlier, I've been to Australia 30, probably 30, 32 times or so.
Jeez.
It was great, but also around the world too.
Right.
So so that the C-suite hears it from the site manager. They hear it from, the CFO. They hear it from so and so, where all of a sudden, what are these guys doing over here? That's pretty
Hmm.
special. And so to be able to kind of just, work it across the organization too, to show your value across the organization on a consistent basis. I would say all three of them, those three areas, strategy, have a vision for developing the team, and then work it all across the organization. And then, of course, demonstrate the results.
Yeah.
Analytics and those kind of things are really, really important. The other thing that I will say now is as well, especially in this hybrid situation that we're all working in, everyone loves the hybrid. It's fantastic. It really is. Pros and cons and those kind of things. I will tell you the best relationships that I fostered during my career were those 5:30 in the evening, people are gone. I'm still around having the hallway conversations.
Mhm.
whether it's with so and so and those kind of things. For those who are working fully remote, like you have to really go out of your way to develop
Yes.
relationships. And the hybrid is great, but you really have to be intentional in fostering relationships.
I entirely agree with that. I
Yeah.
mean, in the sense that I am very much pro hybrid and I'm also pro remote for certain roles. But I actually think that that puts the onus on the person who is hybrid or remote to make
Hmm.
sure that they are being wildly intentional about how they're creating and fostering and using those relationships and using in-person time. Remote doesn't mean that you never go to headquarters, you never
Exactly.
visit a plant, you never, it means that, your workplace is generally, typically home in your home office, but you still have to be out there doing things, talking to people. And that means that your in-person time has to be very intentional and thoughtful
Hmm.
in a way that it isn't for people who are in person all the time, which is a thing that I think people are going to try to figure out and struggle with a little bit until we find what that new normal is.
Hmm.
But it is the way that we're moving in the future. So it just means that how we did things before means, is going to be different to how we do things in the future.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
loved what you said, by the way, about strategy being so critical. The way that I see it, you can't build a team until you have your strategy, as
Exactly.
everything starts from the strategy. And there's a post I wrote once where it was like, if you write your strategy in a day, you don't have a strategy, you have a work plan. And
It's
you
true.
know, the whole point is I have like a signature approach that I use with my clients, and it's about that I built over my corporate experience and years working in the corporate world, which is about engaging the executives right from the jump. Because if
Hmm.
they get engaged and you start talking to them about like what they want to accomplish, not I jokingly say this, but it's kind of true. I don't care what they think about comms. Don't tell me what you want from comms. Tell me what you want to achieve from a business perspective, and I'll tell you how we'll achieve it from a comms perspective,
That's
how
right.
we'll support you,
That's right.
and how we'll partner with you. And so I go in and I together with the comms person will meet with the leaders and talk with them about what keeps you up at night. What are the things that you need to accomplish this year? Some standard kind of questions, but I also do my homework in advance because you got to know what you're talking about before you walk in and waste their time.
Sure.
You got to come in and say, like, well, I know that this was a priority last year. Are you thinking about that differently? Are we planning to grow through acquisition? Are we thinking about things, how are we planning on structuring the sales team differently to support that? Whatever it is, right? You go in with smart questions and you act like the journalist.
Right. Then what you have to do is close the loop. And that
Right,
is, as you develop the strategy, go back and say, remember, I heard what you said.
right,
These are the themes that I heard. I hope as we go through the strategy, you see your voice as part of that
right.
too.
You engage them with you in the
Yes.
creation so that
Yes.
they become somewhat of a co-creator in the comms development without knowing it.
Yes.
And then they see themselves reflected in it. And then what I find with my clients is when we deliver it, and we say, this is what we came up with based on what you all told us,
Yeah.
then they fall in love with it. And usually they want more. And
Sure.
it's like, great, I can give you more if you give me more staff
Right.
or
Right.
resourcing
Right.
or budget or
Right.
or or
Right.
or
Or the other thing is one of the things that leaders like are options and alternatives.
yes.
And I've made a career of saying, look, we only have limited resources. We
Yep.
totally understand that. And that's why you go back to the strategy that prioritizes and focuses everything. And if so and so wants this done, I'm sorry, I don't do Windows and I don't do PowerPoints. Like, you know
Right.
what I mean? So you can't have it both ways. That's the
Right.
beauty of the strategy. And when you execute against that and start delivering, the other part is anymore, people can be self-sufficient in some of the more operational kind of
Agreed.
tactics and those kind of, and we've done a lot of that both at CSL and at Fuji. are starting to do that at Fujifilm. And when you do that, then all of a sudden you unleash hidden capacity and hidden resources and hidden time, and you kind of can focus on that. Then you look at, when it comes time for budget time, you say, okay, here's the strategy. Here's the alternatives. Here's a couple options, A, B, and C. You always get, it's like a menu. Okay, I'll take this, and I'll take that. Okay, fine. You live with it and you go on with it.
Right.
They have to be part of the process.
Yes. I think regardless of how I think you need to know your culture. So like do they want the options or do you go in with this is what we can do given what we have?
Yeah.
And then sort of this is how we would build for the future.
Yep.
And I always like to have I develop as like, the strategy based on the business goals, the team structure based on the
Hmm.
business goals, which may or may not change depending on where the organization is heading,
Right.
external resources, channel strategy, metrics, how we'll report out on all of this stuff. And then it's hard for them to argue against that, right? Well, I also want the weekly email that
Yeah.
do every week. Well, it's like, well, do you see that in like, where does that fit in
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
priorities, right?
Exactly.
So it's hard for them to kind of say, but no, but me, but I want my stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think like you, I agree. It all comes back with the strategy. And you said some really great stuff about being the team's cheerleader and getting, additional insight. I so agree with you on the
Yeah.
biopharma space
Yeah.
being like this, closed community. It's the
Well,
one field where people have a really hard time cracking in, even with
yeah.
healthcare background.
Yeah.
It's sort of like if you don't have biopharma experience, we don't want to talk with you. And
Exactly.
it's like,
Exactly.
well, if you don't hire from other diverse backgrounds, you're never going to be able to advance your field in the way that you want to advance it. You truly want to be game changing.
Yeah.
You need diverse perspectives. So don't ignore that you do need biopharma experience. Of course you do. But I love that you brought in people from other backgrounds as well to kind of supplement that thinking in that team
Yeah.
and creating a culture of diversity in thought and practice.
And we did some really interesting things that just blew people's minds. So let me give you a great example. And so, as we know, the number of journalists have been cut in half for
Yeah.
what, the last
Even
15
more.
years,
Yeah.
right? However, we have these digital capabilities now where we become publishing powerhouses. And part of our strategy was to publish compelling content in a very thoughtful way that helped patients, helped partners, and those kind of things. And so we were publishing every day,
Yeah.
piece of content every day. And people around biopharma said, how are you doing that? I said, well, that's part of the strategy. And we have a team that's able to do it. We did it in-house. That was part of the whole vision to kind of do that. And there's good content out there and bad content out there. And there was a void, especially for rare disease patients. A
Right.
lot of people don't really understand that. But going back to the biopharma piece of this is, you know, I, I, I was a little frustrated because you hear the same issues time and time again. The reputation,
Hmm.
pricing, this and that, trying to innovate, R&D. And it's like, well, it's the same people talking to each other and not bringing in different perspectives. And so that's why we were trying to like break the mold a little bit to be more thoughtful, more engaging with content and those kind of things. And I think we really did make a difference. A lot of people have emulated what we did at CSL
Yeah, it
as well.
sounds like it was kind of part of that strategy. Sounds like it's journalism before brand journalism was really
Exactly.
a thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right.
That's cool.
It was content from us, not necessarily about us.
Right. That's thought leadership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thought leadership, you better have a damn thought. That's
Nice. And serve your audience, not
yeah,
yourself.
we can spend an hour on that one.
Yeah, serve your audience, not
Yeah,
yourself, right?
yeah, yeah.
Tell me a little bit more too. You also said something that I'm really curious about. You said that you think that, it's really important for us to give back.
Mm,
People listening don't know that I was enthusiastically nodding when you were talking about your passion for the field. And I think I matched you on that, Anthony. I think you met your match on that. in
Mm,
me. And I I adore this field and I surround myself with people who are really passionate about it, all its warts and all of its misunderstood and oversimplified field and challenges and all. I'm still kind of like, it's still worth it. It's so worth it.
right.
But one of the things you said was, you think that there's an opportunity for, those folks in like the 40-year-old-ish range, that decade, to get a little bit more involved in giving back to others in our field. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what kind of advice you'd have for them and what you'd envision them doing to help support others in our field.
Yeah. So when we start out, everyone's gung ho, going at it, working hard and, trying to chase after, your next role and that kind of stuff. And then typically life gets in the way, right? And so you have families or maybe you have to relocate, and then life gets really, really, complicated. And what I learned was I loved our vocation. And I call it a vocation because I really do believe passionately it is a vocation. And so many people, oh my gosh, so many people who had they have no idea today how much they helped me. They had no business, they didn't have to help me. And I was so fortunate to be able to, like I said earlier, to have that, third, a third, a third. And so many people helped me along the way. And I just felt like I really wanted to give back. And, I was in my 40s and I finally recognized I can't, this work-life balance thing, that's not going to do it. And so I had to prioritize and figure out, how to kind of to do what I did. And so I made a personal commitment to get more involved and to speak at universities and to so and so's child is, interested in communications. Would you be able to speak with them? I have a long list of so many people who reached out to me and said, could you help? Can you talk with them? And I was so energized by doing that. And I said, you know what? This is something that's a priority for me. And I carved out time to do that. And like I said a little bit earlier, when I was in my 40s, I was not a good friend. I just wasn't because I focused on my family, focused on my role, and I focused on trying to give back to help our vocation become better because it's always evolving and changing. And I feel a responsibility to do this. I don't see as many folks who were doing it when I was at that age. Maybe it's, it's a different environment. Maybe it's the hybrid thing, and those kind of things. I think those who are, on the last third of their career, maybe a little bit more,
Yeah.
engaging, kind of giving. But like when you're in your 40s, you can influence so many people, both who are, 10, 15 years younger than you, because it's still relatable, and even others as well. Like you're like really starting to really hit your stride and like take the time, just
Mm.
take the time to think about what's important for you. And maybe that's not for everyone. Give them, maybe it's not for everyone to give back, but I really believe if you're a chief communications officer, you were so fortunate to be able to get into this role,
Mm.
and you should be giving back in some sort of way, particularly the next generation and helping others along the way. And it's not always hiring them or recommendations, it's advice.
Mm.
One piece of advice that I give, especially those who are coming out of college, don't work for a corporation as your
What do you
first
tell them
role.
to do?
No, go work for an agency for 2 years.
I tell them the
Go,
same thing.
go work for an agency for 2 years. You know what? You're going to work like a dog, but you're going to be able to touch so many things, and you're going to figure out. I like doing this part. Maybe I like media relations. Maybe I like issues and crisis. Maybe I don't like the marketing side of things. Like you'll figure it out. Do it for 2 years, and then go from there. But no one should really, if you join a corporation out of university, it's your growth will be limited.
Yeah, I spent about my first 8 years in agencies. before I moved into corporate. And I think that for me, that was the best move. Again, everybody is different, and in some people might prefer a corporate environment. But I do think that if you are truly like a gung ho, I wanna drink from the fire hose and learn everything kind of person, an agency place, an agency is the place to start. And
Yep.
you're gonna learn. You're right. You're gonna learn your specialty, and you might also learn that you want to do an industry specific thing. You might decide you're also going to learn what you don't want to do
Exactly.
and what kind of manager you want to be when you become one.
Right.
Because you're going to be exposed to so many different types of managers as well, working on an
Right.
account team.
Then you're building your network too,
True.
not just with the agency, but with clients, partners. Incredible opportunities will come out of
Yeah.
working in an agency at the outset of your career.
Most of the people I work with are between like 35 and 50. So I think this is like a key audience to hear your counsel on like getting involved. And I think my advice on that is to think of one small thing you can do.
Mm,
What's one small thing that won't make it feel overwhelming? If you could offer to meet with someone once a quarter or once a month, or if you could offer to be a guest speaker at
hmm
a university,
Yeah.
I've done those as well.
Uh-huh.
Offer to meet up with a networking group. I consider my free content my opportunity to give back to the field. So things like my podcast and
Right.
my newsletters and emails, because I also recognize a lot of people want to work with me, but I tend to work with Fortune 500 businesses. So not everyone has the budget to work with me, but I do want them to get direction and counsel. And I also redirect people to people that I might not be the right fit, and they might be able
Sure.
to find somebody else. Finding that kind of opportunity to give back, and while also knowing you don't have to give every single piece of yourself,
Right.
which I think, especially I will say as a woman, a lot of us feel like it's a pull to like do more, do more. You're not
Mm.
doing enough. You're not doing enough. And so my counsel is think of one small thing that is enough for you, and it will become addictive.
It is. It is addictive. I'll tell you, I get so energized. We live by the University of Delaware, and
Hmm.
long story short, I I'm over there pretty frequently. When I walk out of there, I am so jazzed and energized and like, wow, this is fantastic. There's so much energy. There's so much optimism. Like you felt like you made a difference. It's the word you said is addiction. Like it
Yeah.
is, it's fantastic. It
And you
really,
get a lot from you get I mean, I sometimes feel like I get more from it than the
yeah.
other people that I help or connect with. I have a list of people that reach out to me looking for roles, and I always ask them like key questions, and I have a list where I try to make connections. I'm like, I'm not a recruiter, but I'm happy to be a matchmaker if I can.
Right.
And,
Right.
I have, that's one thing that you can do. Reach out to somebody who's been laid off and ask them what they're up to and what they're looking to do next. And think about people that you can introduce them to.
Yeah. And
Um,
you get there's this sense of pride, especially when you stay connected with people as they evolve. So I'll give you a great example. Someone who I mentored was just named 40 under 40 by PR Week. And
that's awesome.
I was like as proud as his father was. You know what I mean? Like he worked hard, he did all the right things, but it's like, you know what? The conversations that I had with him, I think had an influence. Like you feel so great about that.
Yeah. I feel that way when fellow creators even get listed on, top 20 people in PR to follow or something. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
look, I
Yeah.
remember when they reached out to me and
Exactly.
said, like,
Exactly.
how do you do what you do?
Exactly.
So, and I feel that way. I have a program for women in the field called Raise the Tide,
Mm,
and the goal is to elevate. I always talk about elevate our field and the people in it. And part of that is elevating women in our field because we're a field dominated by women in numbers, but not necessarily in leadership. And
right.
so my goal is to help advance them in their careers and fostering an environment to do that. It's the program that I make the least amount of money off of that I put a ton into. And when I see them, getting promotions,
Mm,
finding jobs. Like one of them got 3 promotions in a year.
wow.
And it's like, I'm happier. I said to my husband, I'm like, I'm happier to see their growth than I am for my own.
Mm,
It's,
like,
it's
yeah.
just this like, and so whenever my other piece of advice here, and I think you'll join me on this, Anthony, I believe you will, is that when you're feeling down or like sad or feeling like, ungratified, go reach out to somebody and do
Mm,
something kind for them. Go do something that's going to make that's going to give back to someone else, and
sure.
you'll immediately get back on track.
Yeah, yeah. Look, this is all about making your own breaks, right? And so if you're down and be able to put yourself in a position of, giving some thoughts or giving something back, like it will just uplift you. Like,
Yeah.
so you have to make your own breaks, put yourself in position for those kind of things. But, I was just a kid from Cape May, New Jersey, and to be able to what has occurred to me has just been remarkable, just remarkable. And
Yeah.
I never forget how fortunate I am. And I think sometimes people forget where they came from or and those kind of
Mm.
things, but it keeps
Well,
me grounded. It really does.
I'm not forgetting. I'm just a girl from a small factory town, a factory city in upstate New York, Troy, New
Mm,
York. And it's pretty well known in the upstate New York region for being like not the greatest place to grow up.
right.
And I'm proud of it. And I'm proud of where I came from and where I'm going, and it doesn't change who I am.
Mhm.
It makes me so much more grateful for what I get to give back.
Yep.
And Anthony, I could talk with you and probably will threaten you to bring you back on again because I could talk
Happy
to
to do
you
it,
for
Darren.
hours. But I do want to ask you one last question
Sure.
before we go and before I take up all of your time today, which is what advice do you have for people in our field? Let's say they're at that, director, let's say they're at that VP level and they're looking to like make the case to be a CCO or that they need to elevate in this field. What kind of skills do you think they need outside of comms in order to do that? Because we're going to assume that they're comms experts already and
Right.
in all the things, or they know enough to be dangerous on, crisis and public affairs and PR and internal comms. And what advice would you have to advocate to get there?
Sure. So, one particular skill set amongst strong communications people and leaders is often not noticed or maybe underestimated, and that is listening.
Mm,
Really listening and not listening to respond, but listening to understand. And we live in a world anymore where we're getting so much distraction and this and that, and information comes and goes, and people want to respond, and social media contributes to that, and those kind of things. My observation has been those who have been successful chief communications folks have had strong listening skills. And to be able to translate the listening skills into influencing as well as supporting the growth of others. Anymore, sometimes people get very competitive, especially
mm,
once you get to like a director level. And look, we've all had this at some point in our career. So and so over here's, my peer, and so over there, and I want, what's ahead of me. And my when I reflect has been, being able to listen, being able to translate into the measurable value, and do it in support of others, not always about yourself.
mm.
Like there's and when people start promoting themselves, like it's so obvious and apparent.
You sound like some of my clients who are allergic to self-promotion, and I tell them like don't do self-promotion, do self-advocacy. It's very
Yes,
different.
that's
And
different.
self-advocacy can also involve others because
Yes.
by elevating what you're doing in connection with others,
Yeah.
like whether it's your team or a cross-functional team or,
Right.
meeting a goal, it's about just showing your part in all of it, not telling everybody how wonderful you are.
Well, remember what I said a little bit earlier, the three sort of responsibilities of a chief communications officer,
Hmm.
start to do that. Strategy, right? Set the
Yes.
contribute to that. Secondly, help others remove obstacles for them and be
Mhm.
the cheerleader, not for you, but for your team and everything around. Like if you start behaving like a CCO,
Right.
it all falls into place. And a lot of this is, a reflection that I learned along the way. But that's the advice that I would say is, start behaving like one. Like,
Mm,
being a servant leader, helping others, removing the obstacles, cheerlead for the team. Like
right.
see others see you leaning in and helping others is like, that's a good leader is going to help me achieve the results and people want to work with him or her.
Yeah, that's really, you just sparked something in me. I recently held a workshop that I do called the Communications Business Advisor Workshop. And it's trying to like help communications teams really advance as advisors, not waitresses and waiters.
I,
And one of the things I said to them is stop talking about all of the wonderful things that you're doing and start shining the light on others, and people will start noticing it. Point the finger at others in a positive way, and people will start recognizing that, that will shine positively on you, but it
yes.
has to come from a place of authenticity. So, authentically, stop being so competitive and know that, like, you don't need to prove your worth constantly to everybody around you. Just start thinking of it as like, of course I'm doing great work. Of course I'm delivering. I have the receipts, I have the proof, I have the measurement, but
Yeah.
I want to shine the light on it wasn't me that did that. It was us, or it was Julie or Tommy or whomever. I really want to share that Susie did this great job on this particular, event. And I want to let you all know about the outcomes that we received. You're not talking about it yourself, or you're not claiming the work as something that you did. You're shining the light on others. And that just reflects so positively on you as a leader. And if we think
Yeah.
about the leaders that we've worked for, those are the leaders you want to get behind.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is put yourself in the position of a business leader, right? So the largest cost is people resources, right?
Hmm.
It's number one. And so when a business leader wants you to be in that role of a CCO, they want to make sure that my greatest investment is being developed, they're
Right.
being successful, they're leaning in. I'm getting, 120% out of them, not
Yep.
half. So, like, our roles as CCO is to develop the talent, and there's a lot of ways to do that. And I think sometimes we forget about that.
I think that's fair. And I think sometimes it's because we think that, especially during times of like challenging economy,
Hmm. Yeah,
economic issues. You and I have been through plenty of those in our
sure.
careers.
Yep.
When there's any kind of threat, it feels like, well, this is the time I need to like make sure everybody knows just how valuable I am. And I think the more you feel like you come at it from that defensive place, the less likely you are to do well. And the more you kind of think of it as team effort, team approach, this is the time to show that I'm that member of the team and that I'm here to grow and I'm here to advance the people that work with me
Sure.
in support of the company, then you're more likely to get where you want to go.
Yeah.
It's all about your attitude and how
Yeah.
you show up.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I reflect on now at this point in my career is how many others that I've supported who are now CCOs or at director level roles.
Do
And
tell.
it's so gratifying to see, like I mentioned earlier, seeing 40 under 40, like you see that and you're like, you know what? I made a difference in people's lives. And as you're old
Yeah.
as I am, like it becomes pretty significant over time. And I just love our vocation and love being able to give back. And you see this and you get this high and fortunately now we can stay in contact with people. You weren't always able to do that,
Yeah.
years ago. Now you stay in contact, see how they're doing and that kind of stuff. It's so gratifying. It's so
Yeah.
gratifying.
Well, Anthony, I
am going to follow through on that threat to have you back on the podcast sometime
Happy to
soon.
do it. This was fun. This was so
Yeah.
much fun, Tara. I
Oh,
really enjoyed it.
good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I had a great time too, and I already have a list of things that I want to ask you about for next time, and I'm going to ask the listeners to weigh in too. What do you want me to ask Anthony in our next conversation? And I'll reach out and we can set up some more time in the new year.
Awesome.
I'm going to just close up now. Anthony Farina, thank you so much for coming on the Communications Business Advisor podcast. And until next time, everybody out there, keep advising, always keep advising.
If you're interested in working with me to advance your work and your team's reputation as critical business advisors, never order takers, check out taramcdonough.com. Thanks for listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a rating or a review. It helps people find us, and we can't ignite a movement without sharing the message. See you next time, where we'll continue to do the work to elevate our field's reputation and elevate the careers of the people in it. I created Raise the Tide to help elevate our field and the women in it. It's part community, part coaching, part professional development, and part mentorship. It encompasses all of these things because it takes all of these things to rise in your career. I asked a few Raise the Tide crew members to share what their experiences have been like in the program, and here's what they had to say. What would you tell someone who's interested in joining?
Do it. It honestly is probably one of the best things I've ever done for myself in my 20 plus year career.
I have received such benefit from this group. I cannot actually express it.
Invest in yourself. I really started this group because it was time for me to invest in me.
To anyone who's interested in joining Raise the Tide, I'd say the return might even end up being well beyond what you might expect. I walked in hoping for some professional clarity, and I've gotten that, but also stayed for the growth and the support and the connection that has come to mean so much to me.
If you're interested in this program, head on over to taramcdonough.com and complete the Raise the Tide form. A rising tide raises all ships, but we're not the ships. Together, we're the force of the tide, raising the ships for our entire industry.